Hey guys, it's Timothy here. This is part 4 of the series. Maybe I'll be able to get these all done by Friday, maybe not, I'm not sure. But we're going to be looking at the Esper shard here that's specifically blue-black control with a lot of white support here. One thing to say about this color combination in general is that it's a very deep color combination. When I say that, what I mean is a lot of the cards that you would expect to play in a deck like this are just universally good cards, and they'll be snatched up by other players who happen to be sharing a color with you. So keep that in mind. But with it also being deep, that means you should be able to get enough playables if you find that you're leaning towards Esper or blue-black control. You shouldn't have a problem picking them up since, I mean, the majority of what we're going to see here is just like removal spells and finishers, the type of cards that people want in their decks anyway. So while this deck does seem like it'd be really sweet for limited and pretty much matches what you would expect out of a control archetype in limited, there is a little bit of competition with the cards. So as with the rest of them, we're going to start off by looking at the specific cards that are geared towards Esper. Zur the Enchanter is very strange inclusion here. This is the type of this card must be in the set just to be reprinted because it doesn't really function in the set. For those of you who don't know, it's a 4-mana 1/4 in Esper colors. It's a legendary human wizard, and when it attacks, you get to tutor up an enchantment with mana cost 3 or less and put it on the battlefield. That sounds like it's quite great if you have a lot of enchantments, but unfortunately I didn't pull it up here. There aren't a lot of enchantments in this set, and the ones in Esper colors are few and far between. I believe there are 4 total enchantments in Esper colors, with one of them being like Stony Silence and the others just not being very impactful. Now, if there were things like Oblivion Ring or enchantment removal spells in this set, I could see Zur the Enchanter having more of an impact, but as is, this card is just really bad in the set. It's not designed with this set in mind. Like, Zur the Enchanter is probably just a straight-up almost unplayable card. The only card I can think of that you would want to fetch with this is either Seal of Doom, which is going to have a little bit of retaliation against other black decks, or maybe Gifts of Orzhova or Gift of Orzhova. And other than that, there aren't really good targets. Like Stony Silence, I guess? Like, not really. Zur the Enchanter is kind of a fail here when it comes to shard-specific cards, so I don't suggest taking it. However, on the other side, the uncommon we have here is Tower Gargoyle. Very strong, very powerful flyer. It does cost 1 more than most of the rest of this cycle, but with that being said, you're getting a 4/4 flyer for 4 mana, which is very, very strong. For those of you who played any limited at all, you know that a 4/4 flyer for 4 with almost no downside is very powerful. Now, I say almost no downside because, first off, it is still a 3-color card. You have to be able to pull that off on time for this to really be as potent as you want it to. And also, you'll notice Tower Gargoyle is an artifact creature. And while I mentioned there aren't a lot of reasons to play artifact removal in the main deck, since there are very few artifacts you want to be destroying, there is still a pretty large concentration of artifact removal in this set. Cards like Sunder and Growth and Ancient Grudge and a couple other artifact removal spells. So if you find that you have a bunch of these in this deck, your opponents will probably have a sideboard card against it, and it is a card that I'd be willing to bring sideboard options in against, since it is super strong, and you can just die to this if you don't take care of it right away. Not to mention, I'm also going to bring this up in just a second, but this archetype really wants to be playing flyers, and yes, Zur and Tower Gargoyle are both flyers, but the more flyers you have in this deck, the better. It plays out a lot like the blue-white flyer decks from Eternal Masters, but with black there for more removal and control options. The other card we want to mention is Arcane Sanctum, just because we want to mention it. If you're in Esper colors, then you want an Esper land, and Sanctum is exactly what you're looking for. Alright, now that being said, we got a lot of cards to talk about here. This is going to be one of the videos that includes more cards specifically that I want to mention. So Wizards announced that the idea here behind this archetype is you want to be playing a lot of counter magic and also instant speed removal spells, and that makes sense. That's kind of what a control deck does. It is worth mentioning that there isn't a lot of counter magic in this set to begin with, and most of it's not exceptionally good. We're looking at pretty much all of the counter spells that aren't rare here. Spell Pierce only hits non-creatures, so while it is a good card, it's a little bit narrow in what it can do. Familiar's Roost requires you to bounce a creature back to your hand, which can be a little bit of a bane if you find that you're in a very light creature build when it comes to your control decks, which a lot of times your control decks will have a very high concentration of spells and a very low concentration of creatures. So probably not premium removal here. Soul Manipulation is nice. It has a little bit of flexibility to it, but most of the time it'll be a 3-mana counterspell, which I guess is what you want to be doing. And then Rewind at common is actually quite sweet. Rewind's a very good counterspell, and having it at common is quite annoying. You do have to get up to 4 mana, and your opponent does kind of have to play into it, but there's not much they can do, and it lets you untap all your lands, or at least the 4 lands you used to cast Rewind in order to cast something else during the same turn. With that being said, outside of counter magic, we're looking at removal spells. Pretty much if it says destroy target creature or it has the potential to do that, then you want it in this deck, as long as you're not stretching the colors too much. Grisly Spectacle has a little bit of a mill theme to it that you're not too worried about, but it is 4 mana unconditional removal. Doesn't kill artifacts. Take that, Tower Gargoyle. Agony Warp is super strong. This was in Modern Masters 2, and it plays out very well against a lot of other creature decks, being able to sometimes set up a 2-for-1, but a lot of times just saving you a lot of damage while also killing off a creature. Banishing Stroke, not premium removal here, but being able to top deck this and miracle it seems sweet. And that goes for almost any miracle card that you can think of in these colors that's included in the set. Granted, most of those are rares, but you get the point. The miracle cards are very strong in this archetype. Cripple and Chill, while not premium removal either, is kind of the dirtily type of card you're looking for here, where you really want to draw the game out to the long game while also progressing your plan. And the fact that it replaces itself and functions at instant speed makes it a shoo-in for this type of deck. You also have just lots more cards. Aether Toe to get rid of attackers and blockers. Path to Exile to pretty much unconditionally get rid of anything at all that you need to. Grasp of Phantoms, I don't think this card's very good, but it is the type of card that you would play in this deck if you need more removal. And of course, Seal of Doom, which is good, but remains to be seen how good Seal of Doom is going to be. I think it's going to play out pretty well, but sometimes it'll be a brick against certain opponents. Now, when you're just looking at this, you see a card like Path to Exile. If anybody at the table is in white, they're going to take Path to Exile. It's a card that you're not going to fight over. You're not going to worry about what kind of archetype you're in. It's just if you play white, you play Path to Exile. And the same goes for a couple other things here. Most black players will want unconditional removal like Grisly Spectacle, maybe Seal of Doom. The counter spells are probably yours if you're the only person who wants to play this archetype at the table, but you will have to fight over a lot of removal. That being said, look how much removal there is. This isn't even all of the cards I could have put on this list, just ones that kind of stood out to me as very good in this archetype. But you will have to fight over removal, and that's kind of mitigated a little bit by the fact that there's just so much removal in the set as is. So keep that in mind. You want a lot of spells. You want them mostly to be instants, which is why I say something like Grasp of Phantoms is not super strong here, but the more instants you have, the more you're able to play at instant speed, the better. I would say a little bit less on the counter magic theme and a little bit more on the removal theme is what you're looking at here. Not to mention, most of these cards are white for a blue-black deck, or at least a good portion of them are white, which I find pretty interesting. Now, you can't win off of just removal spells and just dirtily cards, so you need more dirtily cards, and you need a way to actually close out the game here. There is an annoying amount of really effective kind of dirtily slow down the game type cards. Wall of Frost and Wall of Denial in the same set is super annoying. Granted, they are both uncommon. Wall of Denial is just the most unremovable creature of all time that's going to block for days and days. It's never going to leave the battlefield. It'll hit on turn 3 and it'll be there when the game ends, whether you win or not. Kraken Hatchling is not a good card, but it might be what you're looking for here. We see this a lot in sets. When there are aggressive decks and when there are controlled decks in the same format, you usually get some sort of really early blocker like this. It's not a card that's going to win the game, but maybe it's a card you should consider picking up if you find that you don't have a lot of game against the early players. And then Gideon's Lawkeeper is just a stall card at its base. A very good tapper. It scales in power. As your opponent plays more powerful creatures, you're able to tap more powerful creatures, meaning that your card gains a little bit of extra value. Just a very good card in general, and seems very sweet in a deck that's trying to stall to the late game. Aside from your blockers, you want flyers too. You want creatures that are actually going to end the game. The more tempo-oriented they are, the better. We have cards like Mist Raven, which, again, we mentioned in the Blink deck, and it's quite good, but it's very good here too, giving you a threat in the air while also bouncing an opponent's creature back. We have things like Spire Monitor. The flash on this is pretty nice because a deck that wants to be playing at instant speed can make good use of flash creatures. If your opponent ends their turn without having to, without giving you an option to deal with anything, without giving you some sort of threat that needs to be killed, you can flash in a card like this instead and start destroying your opponent in the air. Talon Trooper just highlights exactly what the deck wants to be doing: efficient flyers to win the game, attacking in the air while you're blocking on the ground. And then Moroi, I don't know how to pronounce that card. This card's insanely strong. It's basically Tower Gargoyle for a different mana. Consider it different mana colors. You don't have to pay the white. You do lose a life on your upkeep, but that shouldn't be a problem. You're attacking for 4 in the air. Like, what else do you need, right? Also, can someone tell me how to pronounce this? I have no idea. I'm gonna guess it's Moroi. I don't know. Moving on. Key rares. I could have sat here and listed pretty much every card that's in blue, white, or black, especially the removal spells and sweepers in this format, because Esper decks and control decks love sweepers. Being able to kill your opponent's creatures and get 2 or 3 for 1s off of your sweepers is a great way to get ahead in a game. But we have cards like Snapcaster, which is perfect for this archetype. Lets you play at instant speed and lets you buy back one of your cards to flashback. Perhaps I should just say flashback, not buyback, but very strong card in any blue deck, exceptionally strong in this archetype. Sphinx's Revelation, which I imagine was built with this archetype in mind. A little bit of a stretch on the mana, but you're not playing this until late in the game anyway, and when you do play this, it doesn't seem like it, but the game pretty much just ends. You gain enough life and draw enough cards that you should be way ahead of your opponent. Cyclonic Rift is probably the instant speed sweeper of choice. It does take 7 mana to overload it, but it bounces everything your opponent controls. All the work they've put into developing a board is just gone when you overload Cyclonic Rift, and you also have the option to use it earlier in the game if you need to. Venser, we mentioned this in the Blink video as well, but Venser's just very strong, similar to Mist Raven, in that it helps play towards a tempo game where you're able to deal with an opponent's threat, or you're able to bounce a spell back and effectively remand it or counter it for a turn while also adding to your board. And then Evil Twin, which is an interesting inclusion. It's just a clone, and clones are usually pretty good and limited, so I have to imagine it's pretty good here. But Evil Twin also has the ability to kill off the creature that it copied. Effectively 2 for 1 in your opponent, but waiting at least a turn to do that. So I do like Evil Twin here. We also have these cards that I wanted to mention because they are good finishers for this kind of deck. You want these big kind of flying creatures, or these threats that go over what your opponent's doing while also giving you some sort of advantage. Cards like Obsidian, which is going to be a little bit of a struggle to cast sometimes, but has the potential to win a game straight out with its ability to drain 2 life every turn and attack for 5 on top of that. Entreat the Angels as a nice way to reward you for stalling out a game long enough that you can draw this and miracle it. Or if you happen to draw it too early in the game, it's still pretty strong for the normal mana cost. Desecration Demon is just good when it comes to limited, forcing your opponent to either take massive amounts of flying damage or sacrifice their creatures and make your flyer even bigger. And then Simic Sky Swallower, if the green mana is not too hard on your mana base, this is just a very strong threat, a game ender, exactly what you want in this sort of deck, and very hard to deal with the Shroud ability. Now, how do you beat this archetype? It seems like there's a lot going on in this archetype. It wants to be playing instant speed. It has a lot of removal. It has a lot of blockers and difficult creatures to get around. And it has these big finishers. Assuming that you have an ideal Esper deck at your table, that's what you should expect to find in this sort of deck. There are a couple ways to get around that, though. Out-advantage them. A lot of the removal spells are just going to be 1 for 1, so if you're playing more creatures than your opponent can keep up with, or if you're casting more spells than the Esper player can counter, you should be able to out-advantage them. Any card that makes multiple tokens or leaves behind something when it dies is going to be very hard for your opponent to deal with. If you look at a card even as simple as Penumbra Sprider, when you kill it, it replaces itself, meaning your opponent has to use 2 removal spells to get rid of it. A card like Lingering Souls has the potential to just dump a bunch of spirits on the ground, and unless your opponent does have a sweeper in the deck, it's going to be hard for them to deal with all of those sweepers. Thragtusk is Thragtusk, and Voice of Resurgence is very similar. Extra shout out to Voice of Resurgence when you're playing against the Esper player. It basically shuts down instant speed shenanigans and forces your opponent to play at sorcery speed, or forces your opponent to just give you all of these tokens that they might not be able to deal with. The other way I mentioned here, and you might see this little sub-theme in the set if you look through all of Modern Masters, is you just attack their hand. There are actually a large number of cards that take cards out of your opponent's hand. We're talking about cards like Sin Collector, Mind Shatter, which is absurd and limited, Sidrax's Spectre, Delirium Schemes, you name it, Inquisition of Kozilek, and these are just a few. There are others I can mention here too. But attacking your opponent's hand and leaving them with no way to counter your spells or remove your creatures is very good. Granted, this is good against a lot of strategies, but it's exceptionally well placed against a control strategy. Being able to strip out all of their instant speed cards means that you can flood the board with what you have, and your opponent's options are going to be extremely limited. Something like Mind Shatter should just be game ending against a lot of these control decks. Now, that being said, that takes care of everything from Esper, and we have one shard left to go, the Jund shard, or as Wizards calls it, the red-green go wide strategy. This is actually going to look very similar to the Naya video where we talked about big tokens, but instead of making large tokens and populating them, we're going to be making as many little tokens as possible and trying to pump up our team for the win. So I'm excited for this one. This is exactly my style of deck. I love go wide strategies in Limited, so we'll see what we get into with the next video. But anyway, if you like this video, if you thought it was useful, or if you're gonna, or if you have any recommendations, I should say, if you have anything at all that you might want to comment about, anything you want to share, or anything I might have messed up on, I did mess up on something else in one of the other videos, then please comment below, like, and subscribe as usual, and I'll see you here for the Jund video next. As always, my name is Timothy, and I will see y'all next time.